Just the
lids.
oh.
Okay, 2 new lids.
We are going to be in Genesis chapter 24. We're toward the end of it, but do you remember where we ended in 24? Did anybody?
I'm trying to look here. Yeah, 27 or 28.
At 27 or 28? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We probably finished at 27. And then we would, I would think, maybe finish it. Okay. Because the 28 would have started kind of a new section.
Oh, that is 27.
Oh yeah, right, that's right. We did where the young woman ran and told her mom's household what happened. I mean, yeah, okay. I think we're probably live, right? Okay. So we're live. We can get ourselves going here. Welcome to everybody. I think if you're still grabbing some stuff, go ahead. Did you get your stuff all nice and warm? Your cider's nice and warm?
Took 2 minutes. I thought maybe 1.
And you have a bag full of apples now, or?
Well, I didn't take them all.
Okay, well, that's
Just
okay.
enough to make a pie.
Okay, okay. And if anybody needs any more, I have more apples than what we put out there, so. Okay. Now I'm going to speak with my mouth full. That's really smart. Somebody want to read verses 28 through 33 of Genesis 24, and we'll kind of get ourselves rolling.
Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring. As soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms and heard the words of Rebekah his sister, "Thus the man spoke to me," he went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. He said, "Come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels." So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels and gave straw and fodder to the camels. And there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat. But he said, "I will not eat until I have said what I have to say." He said, "Speak on."
Okay. So that section would actually start one verse before Claudia read it, and it would be with the young woman running and telling her mother's household about all of this that had gone on. Now imagine this young girl, like we talked about last week, Claudia had maybe indicated that if she wasn't a teenager, we know she was still young. And she went to the well to get water, and her whole life changed at the well. And so, of course, we can understand how she would want, that wouldn't be something where she would just kind of go back to her home in the same way that she went. She would have probably run and guess what happened to me? And they're already going to see what happened to her, and we see that here, right? When her brother Laban, he saw what happened to her because he saw the nose ring, he saw the jewelry, and we talked about the amount of gold that was in these things. So we see all of that going on here, and so of course he wants to know what is happening here, and then he asks the man, and then he invites the man to come to his father's home. And notice how he calls him, "O blessed of the Lord." So we know that Laban's house is a house that knows Yahweh. because that would have been a name for Yahweh, a name for for God, and so and for the true God, and so you would have known that, and so he invites him to come, and he says, "We have prepared the house and a place for the camels." That's really interesting when he says that. I have prepared it, as if they were expecting this to happen. Now, did the Lord, speak to them at all? That they were aware that this was going to happen or not? It doesn't. We don't really have any of that information, but it does say that he has or maybe their house is just always ready for guests. It could be that way too. It might be a house that doesn't look like our house. It's a house that where if we're going to invite Claudia over, we're going to make sure to give ourselves enough of a lead time to be able to get the house ready. Maybe theirs is one that is always ready for guests. It could be as simple as that too. So we don't really.
They had servants too.
They would have, probably would have had servants.
It's easier to keep your house clean if you have servants.
It is, yeah. So you want to come and be our servant?
No.
All right. So then they come there, and the man comes to the house. They unharness the camels. They give food to the camels. Now remember, there were a lot of camels here, so they gave them. They brought quite a large caravan of animals there, water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. And then the food was set before him to eat. So we certainly know that the servant that Abraham sent, he didn't send him alone. He sent him with other servants. Well, one, you'd have to if you're going to haul 10 or a dozen camels with you, stuff like that. You would need more. But also, they would have sent servants. One, because he had servants. But the other reason is, remember we talked about it in the sermon today, a lot of these journeys were dangerous because, you had to worry about thieves and robbers and all of those kind of things. And so it would be rare to send somebody on a 500-mile journey, or a month-long journey, and not have servants with him, that type of thing. So,
And he had a heck of a lot of gold with him, too.
pardon me?
He had a heck of a lot of gold.
And he had a lot of, because he had all the stuff for the dower, all of the things that they were ultimately going to give to the family. You're absolutely right. So food is set before him, and he says, I'm not going to eat until I tell you why I'm here. Okay? Because at this point, does Laban, we don't have any indication that Laban knows that this was sent by his uncle, by Abraham. I should say not his uncle, his brother. Laban's the brother of Abraham. He maybe doesn't know this is coming from Abraham yet. Okay? So, that gets us to the next section, 34, and this is a longer section to 49. Why don't we just read 34 to 44, and we'll start there. Anybody from chapter 24?
So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master and has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old. And to him he has given all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, You shall not take away from my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell. But you shall go to my father's house and to my clan and take a wife for my son. I said to my master, Perhaps the woman will not follow me. But he said to me, The Lord, before whom I have walked, will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take away from my son, from my clan and from
now, does somebody else want to read 45 through 49?
Before I finished praying in my heart, Rebecca came out with a jar on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water, and I said to her, "Please give me a drink." She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, "Drink, and I'll water your camels too." So I drank, and she watered the camels also. I asked her, "Whose daughter are you?" And she said, "The daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him." Then I put the ring in her nose and the bracelets on her arms, and I bowed down and worshipped the Lord. I praised the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me on the right road to get the granddaughter of my master's brother for his son. Now, if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so I may know which way to turn.
Okay, now, a couple of things to note here, and that is the servant, all he's doing is he's recounting exactly what happened. He's just telling the story all over again, so that they have the entire story. He emphasizes a couple of different things here that would be significant to them. One, that this is Abraham, so that would be significant. Of course, it's from your brother, but also that your brother is very wealthy, and see, the family, they figured out that when he put the ring in her nose, when he put the bands around her hand, that she was being asked to be a bride. Okay, so by Abraham being very wealthy, what does that tell them? What would that tell them?
She'll be secure.
She'll be well taken care of. She'll be well taken care of. And then now Abraham's wife had died, right? So it would be really, another thing that was emphasized is that he was on this trip for Abraham, for Abraham's son. So that would have taken a little bit of an anxiety away from Rebecca, who, could have just as easily been Abraham's wife, and there'd be this huge, gap in between them, that type of thing. So there would have been some of that in there. But the interesting thing is he never asks them for Rebecca's hand. He never comes to them and asks for Rebecca to be Isaac's wife. He just recounts the story of why he's there. And what'll happen is it will be something that would be obvious to the family. So he doesn't even have to ask. They're going to respond in kind, even without him asking for her hand. That is what's happened here. So, does somebody want to read from 50? And I think let's go to 58.
Laban and Bethuel answered, "This is from the Lord. We can say nothing to you one way or the other. Here is Rebekah. Take her and go, and let her become the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed." When Abraham's servant heard what they had said, he bowed down to the ground before the Lord. Then the servant brought out gold and silver jewelry and articles of clothing and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave costly gifts to her brother and to her mother. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night there. When they got up the next morning, he said, "Send me on my way to my master." But her brother and her mother replied, "Let the girl remain with us 10 days or so, then you may go." But he said to them, "Do not detain me. Now that the Lord has granted success to my journey, send me on my way so I may go to my master." Then they said, "Let's call the girl and ask her about it." So they called Rebekah and asked her, "Will you go with this man?" "I will go," she said. Do I read further?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. So, of course, they understood that they understood what was being spoken, what was being asked. They also recognized that this would have come from the Lord. Why? Because they heard the story, when he told the story about his conversation with Abraham, and then they came here and everything happened exactly the way that that conversation went. They said, this came from God. And so because it came from God, we aren't going to argue with you on this one. And he said, so take Rebekah with you, and so that she can be the wife of your master's son. And then what do we see? The first thing is Abraham's servant worships the Lord. So there was immediately it shows the faith of the servant in his worshiping. And then what happens? The servant brings out jewelry, silver and gold garments, gives them to Rebekah, and he also gave to her brother and to her mother costly ornaments. Okay, so why would they have given such great gifts? Now they'll also have given them all the camels too and everything later. But why would they do this?
To show that the agreement was in good faith.
Okay, certainly the agreement was in good faith. There would be it was not what would be typical of the culture of the day would be that there would be a price for that bride. Okay, so you'd have to, if we lived back in that day and I came to Robin's parents and I had asked for Robin's hand in marriage, they wouldn't have just said, "Yeah, get her out of here." They would have expected me to compensate them for her. Why would I have to compensate them for her? Two reasons. What?
She wouldn't be around to help with the family.
Yes. Yeah, now here's one of the workers in the home, right? And we're going to have to replace her with someone. We're going to have to replace her with a servant or whatever the case may be. And so yeah, there would be a cost involved to that. And so that would be part of it. And what else might, a secondary thing would be is what if the marriage didn't work out?
It was a prepaid alimony.
Yeah, it would be like, you're right, it'd be like a prepaid alimony to them, because now they would have added the extra help, they'd added the extra burden, and now Rebekah's going to come and live with them again. Now there's the extra cost of Rebekah coming home, and so this would be a way to provide income for that. So that would be another thing. Well, then we see that they sleep overnight, and they when they wake up the next day, her mother and her brother the brother and mother are going to say, well, it's okay that she goes, but can she hang around here for a little bit yet? So they would like to keep her there, part of it is even though they trusted in the Lord, they never saw this guy before, the servant that was here before. All right, so you know what it's like if you've ever done like a major purchase, and you go to bed at night, and then you wake up the next day, and you kind of go,
What the heck did I just do?
yeah, what did I just do? You know, one of those kind of things. That wouldn't be unusual to have maybe some second thoughts. Or not only that, this was their daughter, and and here she's here today, and then all this whirlwind happens, and now she's gone tomorrow. So you can understand why they wouldn't want to, why they want to see. Would it be okay if we just kind of wait a little bit? And when you think about it, this journey is like a 500-mile journey. So this servant came 500 miles, probably a month's time, right? And his task was fulfilled in the first day. So the fact that turning around and going right back, it wouldn't surprise you if he would also not mind hanging around a few days and kind of getting his legs underneath him again before he went back. But he did not. The servant says, "No, I'm really to go back right away." And the servant also would have thought this, if he's kind of wise in his thinking, he would have said, "Yeah, you're not ready for her to go. Are you going to be any more ready 10 days from now? Or are you? Is that going to make it even harder to leave?" That is. I remember that when we lived in Pennsylvania, and Megan was just a little one at the time, and we would come back here for holidays and meetings and things like that. And so you'd spend time with people here, and it's one thing if you hang around for a day or so and then you turn around and go back. But the longer you would stay, the harder it was to go back, and the harder it was for the family to see you. It wasn't like a week later they were ready for you to leave. They got more used to you staying there, and it made it harder to leave. So you would have, but he said, "No, we need to go back right away." And they, and so what they do is they call to Rebecca, and they say to her, "Will you go with him?" And they kind of put it in. It was interesting. They put it in her hands, and what would have happened if Rebecca would have said, "I don't know if I want to do that." That's a very interesting thought. But because they were such a family of faith, they all understood that this is God's will, and they all succumb. They all obey. And that includes Rebecca. So that tells us a lot about Rebecca's faith, too, as we take a look at it, okay? So, now, let's go to the next section. Let's do 59 through the end of the chapter.
So they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him." Then Rebekah and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Isaac had returned from Beer Lahai-roi and was dwelling in the Negev. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
Okay. Now, couple of things here as we take a look at this. Excuse me. let's see where I picked my head up away from here, and now I got to go back to it. Okay. Rebecca, so they sent Rebecca away, their sister, and her nurse. Now, we'll find out in a later chapter that her nurse's name is Deborah. So Deborah was a nurse and a deaconess. She was really what that nurse or that caregiver, that's kind of one of the roles of a deaconess. And so Deborah, this Deborah here is oftentimes used as an example and in deaconess studies, things like that. And so she and her nurse go, and Abraham's servant and his men, and they blessed Rebekah, and they say to her that she becomes thousands of that the great nations come from her. Now, interesting. Did they know of the promise that God made to Abraham that his nation would be, as large as the stars in the sky and the sands in the sea? And so they, and that they speak these words back to her, knowing that promise, or is this might this be just again the Lord speaking through them? I think it's really that's a really interesting thing that we see here. It is really the blessings also they are descendants of Noah's family, okay? And being descendants of Noah's family, God made that promise to Noah and Noah's sons. And so that could be that this is just a passing on from Noah's family too. So that could be a part of it also. And then Rebekah and the young woman arose, the nurse, and they rode on camels and they followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and they went his way. Now Isaac returns and he is dwelling in the Negev. And he goes out immediately into the field toward evening, as you can see the Lord's hand in this. You can see that the Lord is going to place him in the place where he can see Rebekah for the first time. And he lifts up his eyes and he sees that, behold, there's these camels coming. And then Rebekah lifts up her eyes and she sees Isaac and she goes, wow. And who's that man that's walking in the field to meet us? And of course, the servant says, he's the one I'm coming for. And she's going, woohoo! And he's going, woohoo! And it's a perfect match. And that's really what this is. It's a perfect match. And the servant tells Isaac all the things that had happened. And so here, if Isaac didn't know that Dad is helping him find a wife, maybe he didn't know all the details of what happened, or maybe the servant is just recounting that every detail that we talked about here was fulfilled. We don't really know exactly those conversations, but whatever the case may be, Isaac brings her into the tent of his mom and takes Rebekah, and she becomes his wife, and he loves her. And so Isaac is comforted after his mother's death. Interesting here, as we close out the chapter, there's a name you don't see. Abraham. He's the one that got this all rolling, and yet, at the end of this, we don't see Abraham in this chapter. Could it be that Moses, the writer of this text, is now passing the torch to Isaac? So that now the story is going to be Isaac's story. Now, he's still going to recall Abraham's death in here, but the story of the many nations coming from Abraham and his descendants is now going to come through Isaac. And so the story you see the story transitioning away from Abraham to Isaac. So, all right. So now we come to Abraham's death and his descendants. Chapter 25. Okay, let's see. Does somebody want to read the first? Yeah, there's a lot of names in here, so if we stumble through them, we stumble through. We can. Does somebody want to read the first 18 verses of this?
Abraham took another wife, whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan fathered Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Ashurim, Letishim, and Lebanon. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah. Abraham gave all he had to Isaac. But to the sons of his concubines Abraham gave gifts. And while he was still living, he sent them away from his son Isaac, eastward to the east country. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, east of Mamre, the field that Abraham purchased from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with Sarah his wife. After the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son, and Isaac settled at Beer Lahai Roi. These are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's servant, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, named in the order of their birth: Nebaioth, firstborn of Ishmael, and Kedar, Abdiel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jether, Naphish, and Kedemah. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names, by their villages and by their encampments, 12 princes according to their tribes. These are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria. He settled over against all his kinsmen.
Okay. Whew. Okay. Nice job. Nice job. We're so used to Nathan just flowing over those names that it sounds really good when they kind of when they kind of roll out off of other tongues too. Interesting here. We see. Were you aware that Abraham got married again? Anybody remember that? Yeah. Why do you think he got married again?
So he can have all the children that God has promised him.
Yeah. So, isn't that interesting? God had promised that he was going to make Abraham a large nation through his son Isaac. But did Abraham truly believe that?
But was Isaac around when he married her?
Well, Isaac was an adult, yeah, absolutely. Probably, yeah, certain, because Isaac was around at his mom's death, okay? He wouldn't have mourned his mom if he wasn't around. But Abraham here, and Luther is one who believed that Abraham thought that he needed to have more children if he was going to fulfill God's promise of many nations. Or if God was going to fulfill his promise through Abraham, Abraham was going to need a whole lot more children than
Just
you-
Isaac.
than just Isaac. Or more, he was going to need more boys.
Ishmael.
You know, yeah, but remember, even though he had Ishmael, the many nations weren't going to come through Ishmael. Remember, that was the whole promise thing. And so he, so of course he has this Keturah. Now, interesting, look at verse 1 of 25, and Keturah is noted as his wife, right? Look at verse, and this is why Luther thinks this way. Look at verse 6. How is Keturah recognized here? As a concubine, okay? She was a baby maker. Yeah, okay. So this is where Luther's thought comes in, that he married her to have children. Okay, so they have children, and they name off all these children. Now, none of the names have much significance to it, other than there's one in there. Which one do you see in there that might be of any significance? Midian, and Midian, and that's really the only one, and that was one that always gave the Israelite people problems. You know, they struggle a little bit with that one. The rest of them would all have been Arab nations. They would have all become, over time, Palestinians. Okay? All the rest of Keturah's clan would have been from that line. Okay? So, and then we see that Abraham dies, 175 years old, and he dies, and note who buries him. Yeah, that's the key. Isaac and Ishmael. Now, we know that Ishmael was aware that the promise of many nations wasn't going to come through him, and yet Abraham had asked God, well, you know, this is still my son through my servant Hagar. You know, it's still my son. Would you still bless him? And he promised to bless him with many nations himself. But we see that Isaac and Ishmael, there wasn't so much animosity between them that they couldn't get together and bury their father. So whatever this is, it didn't appear that it was this long-lasting hostility or anything like that, because they were able to mourn together and work together to bury her, and they bury him, and they bury him where? In the same cave that he purchased, and so he was buried next to Sarah. Okay, and then after the death of Abraham, God blesses Isaac. And then Isaac settles at Beer Lahai Roi, which is where he was. That was the area where he was in when he sees Rebekah. So he was in Beer Lahai. And so then we see the generations of Ishmael. Again, these are, we see them, but there's really no other information about them as we go down, as we go through time. We don't see a whole lot. They're the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their villages and their encampments. 12 princes according to their tribes. So there were 12 there also. 137 years, and he dies. And that is really it. There's no indication here that any of them were believers or not believers. We don't know any of that. We really don't know much about them other than just the names of the tribes. That would be it. Okay? So,
Oh, I have a question.
yeah.
It says, and they lived in hostility toward all their brothers. Is there anything more?
Which verse?
Oh, let's see.
18,
18. They settled,
It's over against.
18. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria, and he settled over against all his kinsmen. That's 18.
This is where it says, and they lived in hostility toward all the brothers.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting because I don't. Yeah, okay. So they settled over against. Okay. So they were in constant conflict with them. Yeah, okay.
It says God had given Hagar this warning about her son. He will live in hostility
That-
with all his brothers.
Yeah, that he was going to be he would be a warrior and a fighter his whole life. Yeah, that's right. Those were the words that God said to Hagar when he said he would protect him, but he said that he was going to be one that is going to always be wanting to fight. Yeah. Okay.
Is that what's going on right now?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for yeah. Yeah, that's what's going on now, and what will go on until the end of time. Yeah, absolutely.
So
That's
by
it.
the Hamas, but that's Muslim, right? They were talking about it.
Well, it's Palestinian.
So
They're still Palestinian.
Israel was always all they were all called Palestinians, weren't they? At
No.
one time?
No. The Israel is called. They're called the Israelites.
And the Palestinians,
Palestinians would be the Arabs.
the Arabs, which would be Ishmaels.
It would be from Ishmael's family. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. That would be from the tribes of Ishmael versus the tribes of Isaac. Yeah. So they have been. You're right. This is a war. These are wars that have gone on and will continue to go on. And they escalate and they relax a little, but it never ends. It never ends. Now it's just gotten to be. Now what you see you will see extreme tribes that are caught. That what we're experiencing now is not necessarily the theology or the belief of all Palestinians, but it certainly is of the radical Palestinians. You know, it's the same thing that you can say about in our world today. We have when we talk about the extreme right or the extreme left, when we talk about the very, very extremes, notice how violent both of those real extremes are and how there is no compromise in any of those. Well, we're seeing something very similar here, but in an absolutely horrendous and monstrous way.
Savage.
The savagery is exactly right. It's almost like it's not human beings. Yeah. So, all right. Let's get to. We got. Why don't we see how far we can get here? Starting at verse 19. The other thing is, this is by what we've seen here as we close out in 18, we're also seeing kind of the end of the history or the end of the story of Terah, the father of Abraham and that would be, we're seeing that all come to a close with Abraham's obituary, and as we see that closing out there, and then we have this account of Ishmael, which is really, as we take a look at that, if you were to look at verses 12 18, that's kind of just like its own section. You know, as Moses breaks down Genesis, he finishes with Abraham at 11, and then from 12 to 18, he's got this one little section where he's going to just finish out Ishmael, and then he is going to now move us on to the next section of the salvation story, which is the section regarding Isaac. And so that's where we're coming upon right now. So if somebody want to read verses 19 through 20, let's go with 19 to 28.
These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean of Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah his wife conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger." When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came up red, all his body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. Afterward his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
Okay, so this is a very familiar story to us. Note, Isaac was 40 when he marries Rebekah. So they weren't, even if Rebekah was in her early 20s or something, that in Old Testament time, that's not an unusual amount of time in between. But note how long it took before she could have her children. 20 years. You know, so, you know, when Isaac was talking about how barren she was, you know, again, Isaac believed the promise that God made to his father Abraham, and here he probably made some assumptions that this is going to be, you know, she's going to be as fertile as a rabbit, you know, and it turns out that it wasn't so much so. And then finally, she is conceived, and then she has a problem pregnancy. So her pregnancy isn't going very well. And note that she goes to the Lord with this. And so she inquires, I love that word, and she inquired of the Lord. So she goes and asked him, "Lord, what's going on?" And the Lord says to her, and isn't it interesting, the Lord speaks to Rebekah. Did he speak to her through a prophet, or did he speak to her direct? But whatever the case may be, he speaks to her, and he says, "You have a problem pregnancy because you have a divided nation in you." Wow. Well, there you go. I'm gonna have, so one's gonna be stronger than the other. The older will serve the younger, which would be